Good morning. Good morning. We are at the Know Your Rights seminar here at Down and Gross from 10 to 1. If you're watching this and you have questions about your housing situation, need to apply for rent relief, or just want to know more about your rights, you can come here until 1 o'clock. We're going to go on and get started really soon, but I wanted to make sure that the live was working before we got started. So folks are just grabbing some coffee and information and kind of hanging out until we get started. So this will be just a brief pause, but we'll get started soon. Thank you for joining us.
Again, good morning. The time has come, and thank you all for being here. And before we get started, I can think of no better person to come and bring a greeting to us than Congressman Bobby Scott, who is here. He said he would have to leave, so I'm going to ask him to share a greeting with us coming from this great city of Newport, Virginia.
Thank you, Reverend Hunter, and welcome back to your hometown. You've been in Richmond as a minister all these years. I hadn't forgotten where you came from. We were in elementary school together. And you served with distinction on the board of the Virginia Property Law Center. So thank you for your service to the community. What we are talking about today, at the federal level, we pass a lot of legislation and send it to the states, and we sometimes don't know what happened to it. We want to make sure that this money that we appropriated for rent relief is actually getting to the people. And we understand there's a lot of money stuck in Richmond that's not getting out. And these moratoriums are going to end. People are going to get evicted with that money sitting there. So this presentation is going to help people figure out how to get the money out of Richmond and into the landlord's hands, so he will let you stay where you are and not have people suffer from eviction. So I want to thank Delegate Price for bringing us together, making sure that the information gets out, and also to make sure that when you get the information, don't keep it to yourself. Spread the word. Thank you so much.
So I'm Rodney Butcher, and I'll be sharing some welcome and greetings, and also Stephen T will be coming after me. But let me say too that we are part of the outreach committee for the Virginia Poverty Law Center, and we think it's very important for persons in the community to be empowered with knowledge that many times they won't be able to pay for by hiring a lawyer. So the Poverty Law Center, with this passionate heart, saw fit to make sure that we try to take the message out to make it available for persons anywhere and everywhere. So please take these materials, as Congressman Scott said, share it, so others will know their rights. That's what this event is. It's the Poverty Law Center's Know Your Rights Housing Edition. And as we come today, we are so thankful and happy for all the organizations and representatives who made this possible. We want to offer special thanks to the city of Newport News, Virginia, for this beautiful Down and Gross Center. We also want to thank the Tidewater Tenant Rights for promoting events and for reaching out to you members of the community. And of course, we want to give a special thanks to Delegate Cia Price for the diligent hard work that she does for you in this city, and the work that she does in Richmond, Virginia, making sure that justice is done and voices are heard in the legislation. Also, we want to thank the Legal Services of Eastern Virginia, Virginia Poverty Law Center, Consumer Litigation Associates, who will speak to you one-on-one on housing issues. If you have not signed up, please sign up at the registration desk. And I would like to say too, as serving on the board of the Virginia Poverty Law Center, these lawyers have a heart of compassion. So whatever issues you have, you can get a wealth of information from them. And I just think it's a beautiful thing that not only are these lawyers good lawyers and successful lawyers, but they are lawyers who want to give back to the community. So they are here today in this great city to share with you, to make sure that you know your rights. And during this time when evictions may be coming up, the moratorium will be ending. You need to know everything you can know, and also you have a voice that's always speaking out for you. And also, it's good for us to network. This is not the end of our coming together. We need to continue to come together because there are always issues going on in the General Assembly that we'll be calling on you and need your voice to come in. When the delegates have bills that need to be pushed, your voice is very important. So we are here networking as well. So thank you so much for being here, and let's make this a beautiful, joyful, and educational occasion. Now, Stephen.
Thank you, Pastor Hunter, my MC partner this morning. My name is Stephen T. I'm an attorney here in Newport News. I became a board member of the Virginia Poverty Law Center about a year ago. I'm happy to be here. Our goal today is simple, like Pastor Hunter said, is to share information. The eviction moratorium will end next Saturday, so we want to make sure you have all of the resources and information that you will need going forward past the next Saturday. One thing we want to mention is that Delegate Marcia Price's staff is live streaming this event. So anyone who's not here, please tell them to log onto our Facebook page and watch our live video. I want to give you some directions to the restroom, to the right and to the right again. The restrooms are that way. At this time, I would like to welcome Delegate Marcia Price. She represents the 95th District, which covers parts of Newport News and Hampton. She's an ardent champion for workers' rights, tenants' rights, access to healthcare, and voting rights. And as a community organizer herself, she understands the importance and value of bringing communities together, sharing resources and information, and working together for positive change. Please welcome me, and please help me welcome Delegate Marcia.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. And if you are looking for my Facebook page, you just put in Delegate Marcia Price, it'll pop up. And if anybody needs to watch it later, we're going to keep it up. So if anybody was not able to make it. But for this moment, I just want everybody to close their eyes. Take a deep breath in. Deep breath out. And think about what are the questions that you need answered. What is the information that you hope to gain today that will empower you or someone you know as a tenant in this area? And that is my prayer. Open your eyes. That is my prayer, that you receive that information today. But we can't answer questions you don't ask. And so we're very, very hopeful that you trust this space and trust the process and the amazing people that are seriously here to help today. There is no shame, there is no stigma, there is no blame. It's just information, and information is power. And so that's why it's really important that you're here today. So if it's for you or someone you know, Tempest, my chief of staff, and I are here. If it's outside of what the lawyers can handle, so that we can make sure that you get access to those services. So I do also want to thank the City of Newport News for their partnership, Virginia Poverty Law Center, Tidewater Tenants' Rights, Legal Aid, and everybody else that made this possible, but also you for coming out to get the information and promising to share it, right, with everyone. Okay. Right. I did want to tell you about some of the things that we got passed because the moratorium ends next week. But we were able to pass a bill, I carry a bill, that allows for a 60-day stay for an eviction and a 30-day stay for foreclosure. So what that does is buy some time. But what we're finding is if you don't know about that, if you have to go to court, then they're not issuing it. And so that's just one example of how information really is power. But we want to prevent that eviction as well. So we've been working on being able to use your right of redemption without caps, and then also making sure that Virginia's 5-day pay or quit notice got changed to 14 days and payment plans. Those are bills that I worked on very closely with Virginia Poverty Law Center and Legal Aid in order to make sure that people are protected. And so that's just a little bit of what it is that we can do. but there's so much more to do. So after today, I hope the relationship will stand so that we can fight for even more to equalize the relationship between tenants and landlords to make sure housing is just housing. It's not contentious, it's just housing, right? And that's what we're really after. So thank you so much for being here, and I can't wait for you all to get the information you need.
Thank you, Delegate Price. Next, I would like to introduce Christie Mara, who is the Director of Housing Advocacy at the Virginia Poverty Law Center. Christie has been advocating tirelessly on behalf of tenants to ensure that they're able to stay safely housed during the pandemic and get access to rent relief. She has a lot of great information to share about tenant resources and the protections that are available to U.S. tenants. Please help me welcome her. And after that, we will have a brief break after her.
Thank you, Bill Price. Let me just walk out of the room momentarily, Pastor Hunter. And let me just give another shout out to Bill Price. She has really elevated the issues that we care about when it comes to protecting people who are renting and protecting them from eviction and from other hardships that are totally needless. And so a huge shout out to Delegate Price for making this issue front and center in the Virginia General Assembly case. Okay, now for that information. And I don't know if anybody in here has ever been to a presentation I do, but please ask me questions. I'm probably not going to stand still because I'm really bad at standing still. So please do ask questions. Feel free to interrupt me. This is about you getting the information to use, to share, and to empower you. And we want to really make sure you understand the information because sometimes as we're going quickly through slides, we need somebody to slow us down and explain it. So Laura, are you, oh, thank you so much. Okay, so just to give you a little preview of what's coming, I will do an overview of the actual eviction process in Virginia and talk about eviction protections, including those that are about to expire in a week. And then I'm gonna, I think before lunch, right? After the break. And then there'll be a break, and then my esteemed colleague, Laura Dobbs, will talk about housing utilities and resources and repair, how to get repairs done. Okay, evictions. So the eviction process in Virginia is a 9-step process, but I don't want you to be deceived by that. 9 steps sounds like it's going to take a long time, right? Wrong. The eviction process in Virginia, from the first notice to the actual eviction, can be as short as 6 to 8 weeks, right? So it's really important to understand what rights you have as a renter at every step of the process. So let's get started. This sounds perhaps like it's not important, but this is one of the most important steps, and that is that a landlord cannot lawfully evict somebody for any Price talked about the 60-day right to a 60-day continuance that a tenant has right now, and that will expire September 28th of this year.
Chrissy, I'm very sorry, but there are others that are watching and they lost sound. Can you just go back over very briefly the unlawful detainer and then move forward?
Sure.
And then for those of us, again, I'm sorry for duplicative information, they lost sound on the live.
So after the landlord sends you the notice and waits the whatever the required amount of time is, let's say 14 days, they can, if you haven't paid or arranged to enter into a payment plan by that 14th day, on the 15th day, they can file the eviction case in court. And that's called an unlawful detainer case. And you will get served with something called a summons for unlawful detainer. And when I say get served, they may just post it on your door, and that's an okay way to do it. This is a civil case, it's not a criminal case, even though summons and unlawful sound criminal. They're actually civil, and you will have a court date. And it's really important to go to court on that first court date, no matter what, because until the end of September, you still have the right, Delegate Price mentioned earlier, to get that case put off or continued for 60 days. Now you have that right. We have heard that not all the judges are continuing the cases for a full 60 days. Yes, Delaney.
For the 14-day period, would it have to be a written notice or they allowed to email the notice?
I think email is deemed to be a written notice. So it does have to be a written notice. So the landlord can't just say, hey, Delaney, if you don't pay me by May 15th, I'm going to kick you out, right? Can't do that. But if the landlord says that and sends you a text that says the same thing, I think that's probably going to stand up in court. I think we're getting to that point where electronic notices in all forms are okay. Yes, sir.
What's the last day is on a Saturday, and it's you on Friday, on Monday.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you're talking about.
Can you restate the question?
Yes, I'm sorry. The gentleman asked, what if you get a notice on a Friday that they're going to end your lease on a Monday? And that would be a case where they are alleging that you've done something unsafe, right? They can do that. The 14 days, the 72 hours, and the 30 days are calendar days, not work days. So what would happen in that case is they could, on that Tuesday, go to court and file the case. But I think the most important thing to remember is just because you get that notice from the landlord saying, I think you did X, I'm gonna terminate your lease and evict you on Monday or Tuesday, that doesn't mean the sheriff's coming Monday or Tuesday. That means the landlord's going to court Monday or Tuesday and the process is gonna move to court. That's really, really important. You don't have to move out just because your landlord says you have to move out. I don't care how formally they say it. I don't care if, they give you a very official looking document that's been notarized by the Queen of England. It's still not sufficient to force you to move out. They have to take you to court. Okay. So the court that you go to is the General District Court. When you get a summons for unlawful detainer, the court date is in the upper right-hand portion of the summons. And it tells you the time and day you have to go to court. You really, now, you won't get in trouble. You won't get arrested or get charges or anything like that if you don't go to court. But the judge will give your landlord what's called immediate possession. And what that means is you're going to get they're going to be able to get what's called a writ in 10 days. And that writ orders the sheriff. It's an order from the judge that orders the sheriff to evict you. So if you don't go to court, 10 days later, you're going to get a notice from the sheriff saying you have 72 hours before they come. So no matter what, go to court. Until September 28th, you have a right to go to court on that first court date and get your case continued for 60 days. Now, we understand that some judges are continuing for shorter periods of time. So what I suggest, and what you can tell other people is, there is a statute, right? A Virginia law that says, it's actually in the budget, maybe, or it's somewhere. We will get it to you. It's in statute. Thank you. That says you have these 60 days. It's a good idea to take a copy of that with you. It really is. And then when the judge tries to continue your case for 20 days or 21 days or 15 days, I would just hand it to the judge. And if that doesn't work, then make sure you call legal aid if you haven't already, right? Always a good idea, and I can't say this often enough. It's always a good idea to talk to a lawyer who regularly does eviction cases. And I don't mean any disrespect to my fellow lawyers out there, but don't call me if you want to start a corporation, right? I don't know anything about it. So a corporate lawyer or a personal injury lawyer is probably not going to know anything about defending your eviction case. Call legal aid, call the eviction legal helpline, and talk to a lawyer who does these cases regularly. Okay, so you're going to go to court, you're going to ask for that continuance. What's going to happen next? Well, when you actually get to the next court date, let's say the judge gave you your 60 days. When you get to the next, first thing I'm going to say, if you go to court and the judge gives you those 60 days like she should, then you want to make sure you get in touch with the rent relief program and file your application for rental assistance right away, right? Congressman Scott alluded to the fact that we have hundreds of millions of dollars of rental assistance that need to get spent, right? I'm not really the state, you know, sometimes I'm waiting for them to make me queen of everything, but that hasn't happened yet. So the state has hundreds of millions of dollars, and the state very much wants to use all this money to make sure the goal is everybody's rent gets paid, everybody gets rent, a balance set back to zero by the time they're able to, get back to work and move forward. Every landlord is in the black, right? Has money in the bank because they've gotten the money from the rental assistance program. So if you have to go to court and you haven't applied for the rental assistance yet, the first thing you should do when you leave court is get in touch with someone who can help you apply, right? You can find out online. Legal Aid has what we're calling rental assistance navigators now that can actually help you fill out the application online, help you get the documents, help you upload the documents, work with your landlord to get the documents from them. So that should be the #1 priority for anybody who has to go to court on an eviction case. Even if you think you have the best defense in the world, unless you've got a receipt from the landlord saying you are totally paid up, you want to apply for that. Yes, sir.
So this rental assistance program only activates the court system, or?
Great question. No, sir, I was not being clear. That's why I love questions. No, sir, you do not have to even be behind on rent to apply for rental assistance. So you don't even have to have a court case. You don't even have to get a notice that you're behind on rent. If you are worried, if you have had a decrease in income as a result of the pandemic or during the pandemic, because everything is a result of the pandemic, then you should be applying for this rental assistance today. Yes, thank you. Today. Don't wait, right? Yeah, so yes, sir.
Once you're in the process,
Yes.
let's say I'm a landlord.
Okay.
I have tenants that fell behind on their rent because of this pandemic. Once you put that process in, as a landlord, do I then have a safety measure in place? I mean, it takes some time for that process.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you as a landlord, you can start that process without the tenants. You can apply yourself. Now, you will need the tenants to provide some documentation. But again, there are, not only do we have rental assistance navigators at Legal Aid helping tenants, Catholic Charities and one other group that I can't remember off the top of my head have rental assistance navigators to help you. And you should call them today. Leave a message, get a call back Monday. But there is money that everybody wants you to have. So and they will help you get it. Okay.
I think in this historically, when I heard about no evictions, it was like the landlords just left out and people would just stay forever and ever. We just
nope, not this time.
It's rent and mortgage.
Yes, there is some mortgage relief as well.
Okay.
But in terms of the landlords getting money so they can pay their mortgage, the rent relief is yours. It goes, and I think this is really important. The rent relief goes directly to your account. This is not, and the tenant advocates, that's the way they wanted it. Like I remember we talked about this, I would say April of 2020. We convened a group of stakeholders, including tenant advocates, and the tenant advocates said, please have the money go directly to the landlords because they don't want to take the extra step any more than you do, right? So it's there. Yeah. Great questions. Yes, sir.
This program is still going on. In Norfolk, they had a date in January, but they stopped it. So it's still going on.
It is very much still going on. So let me talk about that a little bit. There's lots of money left. And the rent relief money, we have a few more years to spend it. And there may even be more money coming in, because we're actually, believe it or not, now I know we haven't gotten a lot of this money out, right? Believe it or not, 48 states are slower than we are. And if they're too slow, they're going to lose some of their money, and we're going to ask for that money too. So, you know, we will have the money. Don't let it, and there, I have heard those rumors about, oh, we don't have, the money's running out, we only have enough money for one more month, etc. Do not believe them. If you hear them and you're like, well, that person knows, call me. Christie, I hear there's no money left. Is that true? And I will set you straight, because I talked to the guy at DHCD, the director. I talked to the woman who runs this program on a weekly basis, and I call the director of all this housing stuff for the state pretty much on a weekly basis. And so I can pick up the phone and call him and double check, but I promise you, this money's going to be around a while. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, which number? Oh, the number here? Yeah, that's a great question too. This is the rent relief program number. It's everybody take this down, please. 703-962-1884. We also have, Tony is holding up, we have these little cards, fold out cards. Please, everybody, they're on the table over there. When we take a break, please take as many as you want. This should have it does have all the steps of an eviction, but it also has the phone number for the eviction legal helpline, where you can get free legal advice. And does it have the number for rent relief? Yes. And the number for rent relief. And those are the two numbers you need, because the eviction legal helpline will send you to the local legal aid, and they'll send them all the information they need to help you out. Okay, great questions. Are there other questions? All right, keep them coming. All right, let's go. Thank you, Laura. Where were we? Okay, so you go to court, and if you didn't know, for whatever reason, you didn't get the rent relief because you didn't apply yet. For whatever reason, you hadn't heard about it. The law does require really a judge to give the landlord something called a judgment for possession if the landlord proves that you have not paid your rent or that you have violated the lease in some other way. And the judgment for possession is what allows the landlord to get that order, ordering the sheriff to evict you. Okay, so that's the kind of critical point. If you don't go to court, I'm going to say it again. I know I said it at least once. If you don't go to court, the landlord will get a judgment for possession and then a writ that orders the sheriff to evict you. So I sound like a broken record, but I can't say it often enough. Go to court. If there is a problem with work or childcare or some other reason why you think you can't go to court, contact legal aid. Okay, and they will talk you through how to ask for a continuance or whatever else you might be able to do. You have 10 days. Yes, was there a question, sir? Okay, you have 10 days to note your appeal if you can appeal. Here's the situation right now. If you didn't pay your rent, because you didn't know about rent relief program yet, and the landlord gets a judgment for possession, and let's say you owed $1,500 in rent, so he gets a judgment for $1,500 in rent, and he gets a judgment for $150 in late fees, because he can take 10% as a late fee, and he gets a judgment for the court costs, and now that's another $65, and so we're up to about $1,700. You would have to pay $1,700 into the court in order to appeal your case. Most people can't do that, so that's a big problem. So even though technically you have 10 days to appeal, our legal aid attorneys are not seeing any appeals. We are hoping to change that in the next General Assembly session next year in 2022. because we don't think that's fair. Sorry, I'm on my soapbox. Just so you know, though, tenants are the only people in the court system who, if they don't have money, if they're poor, indigent, have to still pay that exorbitant appeal bond in order to appeal their case, right? You get some other kind of judgment against you from a car dealer or a store, you can get that bond waived, but not if it's rent. So we think that's not fair. We're going to work on that. But anyway, that's appeals. Writ of eviction. I bet I could ask you guys, what is that? What's a writ of eviction? Anybody remember? I've said it a few times. You didn't know there would be a quiz. Writ of eviction is an order that orders the sheriff to evict you, right? You get it. If you're the landlord, you can get that and schedule the eviction 10 days after you go to court and get the judgment. Very quick process. If you're the tenant, you get 72 hours notice from the sheriff. Hey, I'm coming. Now, they sometimes give more notice, but they don't have to. And it really all depends on when the landlord wants to evict you and when the sheriff can fit it into the schedule. All right, next. This is so important. This is so important. Yes, sir.
I have a question. Once you're in the program and the program's taking a little longer.
Great question.
And you're doing it, and when money comes in, but the landlord still takes the money and still puts you under the
No, absolutely not. So great questions. If you didn't hear the question was, what if the rent relief money they take a long time and it gets to the landlord? Let's say it gets to the landlord after he files something in court, but before the court date, before the judgment. And this is why you always have to go to court. But you don't have to go to court because somebody in the management office says, don't worry about it. We see that you paid. And then the landlord goes to court and gets a judgment against you anyway. Not legal. Absolutely, positively call legal aid if you find out that happens. Okay. Other questions? This is super important. This was Delegate Price's great work to get this law done. You have a right to do what we call redeem, which means pay everything you owe until 48 hours before the sheriff's eviction. So going back to your hypothesis, right, about what if it takes them a long time to process your rent relief application? What if you applied as soon as you got the pay or quit notice, but they didn't have it, and the landlord was being no offense, I know that a lot of landlords are great landlords. This particular landlord was being a dork, and got the judgment against you anyway, right? And then was bigger dork and scheduled an eviction case. As long as you, as the rent, and then the rent relief money comes in. As long as you pay everything you owe the landlord at least 48 hours before the scheduled eviction, the landlord has to cancel the eviction. Has to. Now, how do you know how much you owe? Yes. Unless what? Okay, if your leases come to an end, that's a whole other complication. So this will probably, what I'm about to say applies if you still have an ongoing lease. Thank you. But anyway, the landlord, as long as you can call the landlord and say, hey, the money's come in, exactly how much do I owe you? And let's say the management office says, you owe at this point $1,732.47. If you pay $1,732.47 to the landlord at least 48 hours before the eviction, he must cancel it. Now, let's say in this circumstance, you've called the management office, you've gotten the full amount, you've said, fine, I'm going to drop off a money order, or the rent relief program has already paid the $1,500. I'm going to bring in a money order for that $272.43. And you do that, and you slip it under the door, talk to the person on a Friday, slip it under the door that night. Sheriff comes and evicts you anyway. Is that lawful? No. And one thing you all should know, hopefully that would never happen, right? But heaven forbid it does, it would be terrible, and this wouldn't make up for losing your home. But thanks to another new law that went into effect July 1st, you can bring a case against your landlord, and you can actually recover a penalty of up to $5,000, or 4 months rent if 4 months rent is more than $5,000. So that's important knowledge. Going back to what Delegate Price was talking about earlier, that's really important knowledge for you all to have, because you want to share that. You want to make sure all the landlords in the area know, look, please be careful and don't evict anybody if they've redeemed, because that's going to cost you a lot of money. Yes, sir.
So, if a landlord files for an eviction, and it's not just for monetary, it's for other things.
Mm-hmm.
And the Virginia Relief Fund provides the landlord with the funds that's owed to him or her. But the eviction goes through because there are other things that the person is being evicted for. That what happens then?
Good question. So the question is, if a landlord is trying to evict someone both for non-payment of rent and for some other lease violation, and the rent gets paid by the rent relief program, can the landlord still lawfully evict the person? The answer is no, and here's why it's no. Because the rent relief program is going to require landlords to sign a document that says, I will not evict this tenant for anything related to the months in which the months for which I received the rent relief. So if you're going to take rent relief, you're not going to evict. That's the short answer. It doesn't mean you don't have legal grounds to evict in other ways, but for other things, but it does mean that you are agreeing to let the person stay because you're accepting the money. Yes, Delaney.
For that kind of program, I think if they really have to sign, the landlords and the tenants have to sign an agreement saying, I'm not going to evict this person for not paying the rent during the periods that we're set.
Okay, thank you.
So I think that.
So I was wrong. No, thank you, Delaney.
So
Yeah.
So I think that they're still able to pursue eviction if it's for non-payment of rent. But you can't evict them for non-payment of rent for the months that you're receiving payment for. So unfortunately, you can stop future eviction if you're not requesting future rent for non-payment.
Right.
But if you're saying you're requesting for July, and we're still in July, you get July, you can't evict in July for non-payment of rent.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. What?
Can you repeat that?
Yes, I will. So I was wrong. What I just said was wrong. So, and thank you, Delaney. So the correct answer is, when you get rent relief, you have to sign something agreeing to not evict the person for the months that you were paid for. You can evict them based on non-payment of rent, but you can evict them for other reasons. So I was wrong the first time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's our great Tidewater tenants' rights folks in the back. Okay. Next. Yeah, so that's the process. And again, go to court, go to court, go to court, and call either your local legal aid or the eviction legal helpline as soon as you can. As soon as you get that notice from the landlord, that pay or quit notice, do not wait. Get in touch with the lawyer right away, a lawyer who practices this type of law. Okay, all right, we already talked about this. I'm going to talk about a little bit more. This is the penalty for unlawful exclusion, the new law that went into effect July 1st. So we've already talked about how if the landlord evicts you, even though you paid everything you owed before, 48 hours before the eviction, that is an unlawful exclusion. But in addition, and the main reason this law was put into place, we have heard for years, and even more during the pandemic, that there are landlords who don't want to go through the legal process, and so they do things like terminate somebody's lights, board up their door, change the locks. These are not lawful. These are not lawful ways to evict someone, no matter what the person may or may not have done. And if a tenant is evicted by one of these unlawful ways, which is any way that doesn't involve court, then they can sue for unlawful eviction and get a if they prove their case, $5,000 as we call it damages, but as a penalty. Questions about that? Okay, next. I know that I've talked too much, but you guys had great questions, so keep them coming. All right, a number of people have mentioned the fact that the federal CDC moratorium expires a week from today. So there is still a week during which you can use its protections. And that's really important. I think that some folks may have the sense that the moratorium just means nobody can get evicted. It's not really a moratorium. That's what a moratorium would do. A moratorium would say, y'all are safe, not going to get evicted. This is not really a moratorium, even though we all use the word. These are enhanced protections for tenants. How do you get these protections? You have to meet the qualifications, which are up here, right? Which says that, well, we're on the next page has the qualifications, but you will go over those, but you fill out something called a declaration that says, I swear I meet all these qualifications, and you give it to your landlord. You're protected. You have one more week in which you can use that. Yes, ma'am. So for the CDC, for the protections under the CDC, which lasts for one more week, the landlord doesn't have to sign anything. You sign it, you give it to your landlord, you keep a copy, you're protected. But for the rent relief program, the landlord does have to provide documentation. If the landlord is refusing to do so, you have a defense to eviction. Because if their failure to cooperate is the reason the rent's not getting paid, that's on them, right? And the judge should not let them evict you. The judge should not give the landlord a judgment for possession. But boy, oh boy, that is definitely a situation where you need a lawyer to make those arguments. So again, legal aid, eviction legal helpline, call right away. And don't be shy with legal aid, okay? I was a local legal aid attorney in Richmond for 13 years. Squeaky wheels get the grease, right? So don't be shy. If you haven't gotten a call back within 2 days, pick up the phone, call again, send an email, send, whatever you can do, don't be shy. That's a real important thing. Okay, so these are the qualifications. Oh, we didn't go over the qualifications. All right, we don't have time. Okay, we'll talk about that. This is really important. We talked about this. This was Delegate Price's bill. Remember, we said show up in court and get your 60-day continuance. There are some requirements for that. You do need to bring written proof that you lost income during the pandemic. And I say during, it really is technically because of the pandemic for this particular right. Hopefully judges are being, are interpreting that the same way that the rent relief program is, so that if you can show you had a loss of income during the pandemic, that's enough. But you do need to bring some documentation. There are judges that are accepting self-certification. And on our website, for example, Property Law Center has a form affidavit or declaration that you can fill out and take to court, because you do have to provide something in writing. But that's you saying, I promise I lost income, my hours were cut, whatever. And it doesn't just, I would argue, it's not just that you lost income. It could be, I relied on child support to pay my rent, and the parent who paid it to me lost her job. I relied on spousal support, and the person who paid it to me lost his job. So I think that would work too, or whatever the source of income was. Okay, we talked about payment plans. We talked about cap on late fees, 10%. That's what you need to remember. Landlord cannot charge more than 10% of the amount of rent that is late. So it's not that you as a tenant have to pay. Let's say you have a voucher that pays for $800 of your rent, you have to pay $400, right? Voucher keeps getting paid, you lose your job, you can't pay the $400. The landlord can't charge you $120 as a late fee because that's 10% of the full amount. Landlord can only charge you 40 because you're only responsible for paying 400. Okay. Okay. So staying after your lease ends, and this is a little bit the question we got earlier. What about lease non-renewals? We are seeing a lot of situations where landlords are not allowing tenants to stay after their lease ends. But there are circumstances in which the landlord would allow you to stay. First thing I'd say is talk to your landlord. Second thing I'd say is if the landlord accepts rent, let's say your lease ends in the end of June, but the landlord accepts your July rent, you've just created a new lease situation, probably a month to month. But in order for the landlord to end that, he's got to give you another notice, a 30-day notice saying, you're not going to be my tenant anymore. And again, no matter what, you have to be taken to court in order to be evicted. Okay? Is that it? Okay. Sorry I talked so long. I am obviously going to be here for the whole event. So, oh wait, one more question?
So the 60-day notice can also be an increase in expenses like childcare or hospitalization.
I don't think so. So it says loss of earnings. Yeah. For the CDC protection, which lasts one more week, it can be an increase in expenses. That's the difference. Okay, I'll be around. Happy to answer questions one-on-one. Thank you all. And what are we doing now? Turning it over to Stephen.
Thank you, Christie. That was actually very helpful to me, an attorney who helps people in these situations as well. Right now, we're going to take a break, but please remember to on your form to check the box if you're interested in the rent relief, a rental assistance program. Attorneys are here to help you fill that out. And you can also go out and Tony's here with her hand. Go out to the table and sign up for assistance with that process. Tony, do you need to?
So, just want to, well, number one, for the people who are on Facebook Live, go to www.bplc.org, and at the top, you will see a housing resource tab. Click on that. A lot of the resources that are being shared here today are available on the website. Download, pass out. For everybody that's here, please, we have a ton of materials, take them back, distribute them to your neighbors, and help, let's get everybody the information they need. And before I turn it back to Stephen, I just want to call a couple people, and we will start your intake process during the break. And so we're looking for, you guys can just meet me at the door, looking for Faith, Anita, wait, yes, and all right, thank you.
Thank you, Tony. And we're just going to take a brief 10-minute break, everyone. And then we're going to hear from Laura Dodge, an attorney in the housing lawsuit. Thank you.
Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. We're gonna keep this going for the 10-minute break as opposed to starting a new live. So feel free to get up, stretch, get something to drink. So we're gonna keep this going. We'll be back in 10 minutes. I'll put it in the comments. Keep your questions coming. We have lots of lawyers and resources in the room. And as you ask a question, I'm answering them. Or you can text 757-266-5935 and give us your email address. We can send you all of this. And you can also check the links that we put in the comments if you want to go on and start applying for rent relief. You can also come down to Down and Gross until 1 o'clock today. We'll be here. So we'll see you in 10 minutes.
All right. All right, thank you, everyone. Before we start on our next session, I would like to invite Mr. Mike Taylor from the Newport Department of Human Services. to tell us a little bit about what his office offers in terms of rent relief and rental assistance and housing assistance in general. Everybody, please welcome.
Afternoon. Good afternoon. I'm Mike Keeler with the housing broker team here in the city of Newport News, and we're actually part of the Department of Human Services. What we do primarily is homelessness or homeless prevention. And in a broader sense, that's not just folks that are on the street that we're trying to get in the house, and it's actually folks that are going to be evicted or at risk of being evicted, which we categorize as imminently homeless. What part of what we do is that we serve as a hub for the different funding sources that are out here to help people pay back rent, catch up on arrears, people that are trying to access affordable housing. Say somebody gets a voucher for second housing, but they have to pay a security deposit, or maybe has some old barrier bills like Dominion Energy or old judgment that they need to pay so they can get actually use that voucher to access affordable housing. We assist in those kind of situations. As with most resources you'll find in Newport News, we're accessible through the housing crisis hotline. And you hear a lot of people will say, well, I called this, and they keep telling me to call a hotline. The reason they do that, our program as well as other programs access state funding as well as local funding, and that state funding requires us to utilize the hotline so no one has a separate door they can go through to get assistance. We want everybody to come through the same door. No one should get more help than another person because they knew somebody and this person did. So we do tell people to come through, call the hotline, which is 757-587-4202. That's not accessible. There's a card on my table, so you can take a card if you don't remember what the number is. But please, even if it's not for yourself or friends or family that you know are experiencing a problem with maybe being evicted, or they're behind on the rent, or they were impacted by the COVID pandemic, they can call that hotline, and the hotline will provide resources which may or may not be referrals to our team, or it may be referrals to other resources that are in the area. But primarily what we do is, as I said, it's homeless prevention, whether it be imminent evictions or other issues. And we do also encourage landlords. We always need landlords that are willing to work with some of our families that may have some barriers or situations that maybe aren't attractive to an apartment complex, but maybe you're willing to work with that. And we do work with our people that we refer to. So we won't abandon you. We won't drop anybody off and leave. We won't do drive-bys. We stick with our folks. So landlords, if you're here, there's a sign-up sheet on my desk on our table. Please utilize that and give me your information, and we can tell you more about what we do. And thanks for coming, and I hope everybody gets a lot of information, and make sure you do share that information with everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. And for those on the live, again, that number is 757-587-4202. City of Newport News, Department of Human Services. Next, we'll have Laura Dobbs. She's an attorney with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. She's going to share information about repair issues and other condition issues in your residences. Everybody welcome Laura.
So first, we're going to go over some of the housing utility resources that are out there. You've heard a lot about the rent relief program, but we're just going to run through some basics. So even if you don't need this information, you can pass it on to somebody else. So the first is Virginia has been ahead of the rest of the country in setting up a rent relief program for rent and mortgage relief. It can help cover your arrearages dating back to April 1st of last year, and cover up to 18 months if needed to prevent homelessness. It can also help you pay rent in advance. So even if you're currently caught up on rent, but you got bills you're trying to catch up on, go ahead and apply for rent relief. We're encouraging you that even if you've been paying rent in full, but you've been unable to pay other bills, you should still apply for rental assistance, because once you have rental assistance, that frees up money to cover those other bills. And there's also assistance available even if you have some sort of housing subsidy, such as a housing choice voucher. They've expanded it to where folks in that situation can also get rental assistance. And I think an important point about this is it's not a loan. This is assistance that goes directly to the landlord. You're not going to have to pay it back. There's an interest in making sure that people stay housed and that we all recover together as a community from this pandemic in the various ways it has hurt families. So they try to make sure that as many people as possible have access to it. The main requirement they talk about is that you've had a loss of income or increased expenses, but that can be interpreted a wide variety of ways. If you've had to stay home to take care of kids, if you stay home to take care of a loved one who couldn't work, or if you're unable to work because you have some sort of health condition that puts you at higher risk of COVID, any of those things qualify. And even if you're not sure if your situation does, you should still apply to see if it does. The biggest thing is making sure that you have rent that's at 150% fair market rate or below, which, for most folks, they're in that category, or if you're at 80% of the area median income and below. Now that exact amount will depend on your family size. So if you're unsure, you should still talk to some of the rental assistance navigators who are here today to help assess your situation to see if you qualify. There's multiple ways you can do it. You can either apply by calling the phone number, which is 1-703-962-1884. There's also an online application. You can find it at DHEB's website. They also have a tool on there that can help you determine if you're eligible. There's also a portal for landlords to apply directly on behalf of their tenants. And we're encouraging landlords to do that, particularly if you have multiple tenants. It's just going to go much smoother for you, probably get that money a little bit faster if you go ahead and initiate an application. And that portal is through Virginia Housing. You can go to virginiahousing.com/RMRP, or you can send an email to rmrp@virginiahousing.com. Next slide. And there's also people who can help you in applying. We understand that there can be barriers if you don't have access to the internet or to scan your documents, or you're having trouble understanding what those requirements are. There's people at both legal aid who can help you apply. There's folks here today, so if you need assistance, go and get that started today. Or if you know someone who needs help, have them call legal aid 757-827-5078 if you're in the Tidewater area. But if you're in other parts of the state, you should call the Eviction Legal Helpline. That's 1-833-NO-EVICT, and there's people who can help you. And if you're working with folks who are Spanish speakers, and English is not their primary language, we have folks with Eviction Legal Helpline who are native Spanish speakers and can help. Additionally, there's assistance for landlords who need help applying. That program is through Housing Opportunities Made Equal. I think they contract out with Commonwealth charities in the area, but if you're not from here, you can go through home and they can get you connected to the appropriate housing counselor to assist you. Is there anything I missed on?
So I would just say that when applying, yeah. So when applying for the rent relief program, there's some really confusing parts of the application, whether you do it on the phone or online. If you apply online, there's some flyers here about how to do it yourself if you wanted to, because of the confusing parts. So this should help clear up any confusion, but if you need further assistance, if you have any more questions, then you can call the number at the bottom of this, which is legal aid for the rental assistance navigators. Also, you can apply for the rent relief program at any step in the eviction process, and it could help stop or delay your eviction. Even if you paid, or even if you applied right before you got the writ of eviction, it might be something that could help stop the writ of eviction. And the application takes a while to get approved typically, and it typically gets kicked back and like partially rejected for really annoying and small reasons that you wouldn't really expect. So it's kind of, that's in the way that it is complicated. So if you do apply and you do experience those like problems or kickbacks in the application, you should call legal aid or Tidewater tenants rights to ask for assistance in applying. And because, for instance, if you applied right before you got the writ of eviction, you only have a few days to kind of work out when you would get the application approved. There are some ways to expedite how fast you can get the application approved. And again, you should just call legal aid to see how that can happen. There's something else. Are there any questions like about the rent relief program in general? Because it's a lot of information and I know some of it's confusing.
Well, when it comes to turnaround time
on these things. You just said sometimes it gets kickback, so you're sitting there as a landlord and you're trying to work with the tenant. So 60 days, 90 days, what's the average turnaround? Do you have an idea what it is? Or?
So it depends. It's a case-by-case basis, unfortunately, because the people who review the applications at Duval, at the Helpline program, they have different like reviewing methods. So it kind of depends on the person reviewing your application who you don't know speak to. But sometimes I've gotten an application approved in 2 days if I tried to expedite it, or I've gotten applied or approved in 1 day if I expedited it, going through like the processes to contact people to expedite it. But if you're just applying yourself, or if you're a landlord applying yourself, or you're a tenant applying yourself, it can take 2 weeks. It could take less than that. It could take more than that. It really depends on the amount of kickbacks that you're going to get, the amount of problems that are going to happen with your application. And you can prevent those by kind of trying to reference this sheet to make sure that you're not entering wrong information and providing like information that's going to hold up your application. But I would say that if you have an application that's taking like an unreasonable amount of time to be approved, contact legal aid or Tyler rights to see what you can do to make it go by faster.
So that form is for both landlord and
this is directly referencing the tenant application, but it's kind of similar to the landlord one.
is that over there?
Yeah, these are over here. I think or someone referenced that the Catholic Charities helps landlords apply. So if you're a landlord and you're applying, you could still contact legal aid and they would just like direct you to people to help or answer a few questions. But yeah, that should help clear up anything with the landlord and the tenant side. But also, if for some reason anybody has applied for legal aid or has contacted legal aid and got told you make too much for us to assist you, that doesn't apply to the rent relief program. The people who work at legal aid can still assist you if you make too much for legal assistance, because there are different requirements. So if you want help with rent relief, there's no like income cap to get help with rent relief when applying.
Yeah, so one of the things too that I forgot to mention. So the General Assembly is going into special session August 2nd, and so a lot of the things that there was more mortgage help for landlords before. The prioritization of rent and mortgage relief is very high for the General Assembly. And so that funding, so we got the $4.3 billion from federal funding from the American Rescue Plan. How we're going to use that is what we're deciding in the special session. And I'm just relaying that both rent and mortgage relief are high priorities for us. But in order for us to continue to keep it as high priority, it is really important that you hear, that we hear from our residents. And so, I'm over the 95th district. If you're into precinct 07 to precinct 05, all the way up to, I know you, but all the way, for anybody watching, for all the way up to the mall on the Jefferson side, over to Hampton, and then on the Ward side up to Smoke Restaurant. So that is me. And if you're in that area or near that area, Tempest and I are here to help with that. But we need to hear, and the senators need to hear as well, so that we can make sure that we pass that to add more to it. So I just wanted to put that out there for August 2nd.
Thanks, that's a really important point. So yeah, if you have any questions while you're here, you can feel free to talk to one of our assisters and navigators, clear up some questions. I think some of the most common things I see from kickback is that they didn't have every page of the lease, if they didn't have an updated ledger. So making sure you dot your I's, cross your T's, which can be a little confusing, but that's why we have people here to help. Thanks. And this has we have some resource up here, the housing crisis hotline that was mentioned. And there's also phone numbers for different areas, whether you're Norfolk, Chesapeake, the Peninsula, as well as Virginia Beach residents, a few other things, and we'll make sure that we get this information out to those who are watching on Facebook Live. Also important, just as people are struggling to pay rent, you've got utilities, particularly now you're running that AC, trying to keep the heat. It has been a utility shut-off moratorium, but that is going to expire on August 29th. So August 29th is a weekend. So if you're going to get help, you need to do it before August 29th. You have the right to enter into a payment plan to pay off your balance. You should contact your utility provider and demand to get a 24-month payment plan. Or, take the amount that you owe, divide it by to see how much you can afford each month on top of your regular utility payments to get on something that works for you. The state did receive a lot of money to help with utility assistance, but we don't have that program propped up yet. Again, if you need help with utility assistance, and you want to see that money goes out, contact Cedar Bryce, contact your senator to make sure that they make that a priority, because we have the money, we just need to get it into the consumer's hands. But in the meantime, yes? Oh yeah, do you have the legal assistance?
Yeah.
Awesome, I'd love to hear that.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Lynette Baldwin. I'm with the Newport News Department of Human Services, and I currently serve with the Energy Assistance Unit with Newport News Department of Human Services. Right now, through August 15th, we are assisting households who meet the criteria with a $400 payment to Dominion Energy to help with the electric bill. That criteria for cooling assistance is you have to have what's considered a vulnerable person in your household. That vulnerability would be an elderly person that is 60 or older, a child in the household that is under the age of 6, or a person who is disabled and deemed disabled through the state of Virginia receiving SSI for that disability. So again, that program is going on now through August 15th.
Awesome, thank you so much. And if you're outside of Newport News, you should contact your utility provider or your city to see if they have any local funds. We know some localities receive federal stimulus dollars to help with that, but that money kind of comes and goes. So keep on top of that if you're falling behind on your bills. We also have our BPLC utility helpline. If you're struggling, you're trying to figure out how to get on a payment plan, you should call that number. It's 804-313, was that 9363. So if you've already reached out, you've tried to get on a payment plan, they're giving you problems, they're not giving you the full 12 months, reach out to the utility helpline and they can help you get that squared away. Another important thing about the rental assistance, so if in your lease it says that you pay your water to your landlord, rental assistance can help you pay that. Anything that's covered under the lease, rental assistance can help you pay that. So even if you think that, oh, I'm behind my water bill, if that's going to your landlord, that can get covered by rental assistance. But for anything that you're paying directly to the utility provider, you should be asking for a payment plan. And hopefully by the time General Assembly finishes this meeting, there will be a lot more assistance going out to consumers.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I've heard in Norfolk, people say they can't get a system or they can't get that to either or. Is that true?
I'm sorry, I had a hard time hearing you said in Norfolk.
They were saying Norfolk Jane that's saying you can't get one of them, you can both, either one of the other. Is that true?
So the question was, in Norfolk, people were being told that you can either get one assistance or the other, but not both. That is incorrect. Just because you have rent relief doesn't mean you can't get utility assistance. You can get both. So that's not true. Just because you have assistance in one form doesn't mean you're ineligible for assistance in another form. We encourage people to apply for both. Awesome. Next, we're going to go over some repairs and maintenance. We know that this can be a particularly confusing topic for a lot of people. So just some basic steps of if you're having maintenance issues in your home, or what to do to get those repairs done. So the first thing is that your landlord has a duty to provide you with a safe and healthy place to live. So if something breaks, they have to come fix it. Additionally, if it's an emergency, the landlord can enter your home without your consent to make sure, for example, there's a gas leak. They have a right to enter your home immediately to get that fixed. But for any other maintenance, any routine maintenance, they have to give you at least 72 hours notice before entering the home. It used to be 24 hours, but as of July 1st, it's now 72 hours to do those non-emergency repairs. But the important thing to start that process, if you have an issue, is you provide notice to your landlord about the issue. So they don't know about it, they can't fix it. And so there's two ways. If you made that request, you give written notice to your landlord that says, hey, my AC isn't working, and they still haven't come out and fixed it. Or they tried, but it's still not working. There's two ways you can try to get those repairs. One is through repair and deduct, which we'll go over those steps. And the other is through a tenant assertion. So the first one, repair and deduct. This is something that got passed last year that allows a tenant, as long as you have given written notice to your landlord about the issue, and you've waited at least 14 days for that landlord to either complete or take those major steps to get that repair done, then you can at that point take it into your own hands to hire a licensed contractor to come and do the work and then deduct the amount of that from your rent. There's some very important steps that you follow with that. First, making sure you're giving a written notice to your landlord in the first place, and that you're waiting that 14 days for the landlord to start that repair, take those major steps to show that they're going to act on it. Now, if they don't do that, then you would have to make sure that whatever contractor you're getting is licensed. You can't just call your cousin Vinny to come over and fix air conditioning. You have to be a licensed contractor. And then you have to give your landlord an itemized receipt showing the cost of that. Now there is a cap on the amount that you could deduct from your rent, which is either $1,500 or 1 month's rent, whichever is less. So if it's a really big, expensive repair, you're not going to be able to deduct all of that from your rent. You're capped at the amount. But another important aspect about that is if, say, you don't have the money up front to pay for that, but you have a local church or a nonprofit who's willing to donate to get those services done, you can still deduct the amount from your rent, even if those services were donated. So that's important if you are someone who's with a church or with someone who helps out that way. This can be a really important resource. And yes.
So if you had organs and do your home, because they, whatever is plus is bringing them out, it makes first money. So if you have organs coming in and do that service, can they do deductible?
Yes, again, making sure that you're giving that written notice, giving an opportunity for the landlord to do it, but they don't, you can have a licensed exterminator come and do it. And keeping in mind, this is really focused at those health and safety issues. It's not like, oh, there's a dent in the wall. That's not necessarily a health and safety issue. It have to be something like there's electrical wall issues, there's a broken step, there's a busted window, you have rodents or pests, backed up sewage, if you smell gas, if you don't have heat in winter. Those are the health and safety things that they need to be acting on quickly. If they're not, you can get a contractor to do it. Yes.
Do that by the all-around, you public housing, just private.
So the question was, does this apply for public housing as well, or just private? It's any landlord in Virginia, not just private housing, but also public housing. The other method, if you don't do the repair and deduct, is you can take your landlord to court. Just as you as a tenant have a duty to keep the premises reasonable and not too messy, and a duty to pay your rent, your landlord has a duty to keep your place safe and healthy and address that. So if they violate the lease in that way, you can take your landlord to court by filing what's called a tenant assertion. Now, again, there are some requirements to be able to file this. One, you have to be current at rent and stay current. So if you're behind on rent, that can be a barrier to getting to court. That's why you should reach out for rent relief to help you get caught up. And I think I've heard in some instances of rent relief helping pay that into court, but maybe that's just Chesterfield and the local programs that do that. And you have to give written notice to your landlord of the need for repairs, and then wait a reasonable time for them to make those repairs. Now, reasonable is a bit open to interpretation, but now that we have that repair and deduct bill that says 14 days, 14 days is reasonable. If they're waiting 30 days, that's not reasonable. If it's in the middle of winter, 30 days in, they still haven't fixed the heat, that's not a safe situation. So if that happens, you can go to court. You would go to General District Court where the property is located. So if you live in the city of Newport News, go to Newport News General District Court, and you'll ask for a form called a tenant assertion. There is a small filing fee, but if you're indigent, meaning that you're low income and you don't have the money, you can ask for a waiver from the court to waive those fees. But you do have to be current on rent. And as rent becomes due, you would pay that into court, into escrow is what it's called, to ensure that that kind of forces the landlord to come to the table a bit, and the court can decide if the landlord indeed hasn't fulfilled their duty to give you heat in your house. The court can decide to say, hey, if you're paying, $800 a month, but they don't have heat, it's not worth $800 a month. And they can give some of that money back to you, or some back to the landlord, or all back to you, depending on what the judge decides. So making sure you pay rent and support is really important. Or if it's such a bad and terrible condition, you can decide to end your lease agreement. Say, hey, this isn't a safe place to live. I'm going to go live somewhere where my children have heat. So that's another option. And the judge can also just order the landlord to make the repairs. I think that's the thing that you're going to see most frequently is a judge entering an order, ordering the landlord to make the repairs. Now, say a judge does that, they're still not doing it, you go back to court and get other types of relief. But again, have to be current on rent. And I think the lesson from both of these is that so many people have the assumption that, well, if my landlord's not fixing my stuff, I'm just not going to pay rent. That's not true in Virginia. There's very specific things you have to do if you want to withhold rent. The first is, if you're going to do the repair deduct, you have to follow those specific steps. Otherwise, you have to file something in court. Just like the landlord can't kick you out without going to the court, so do you also have to take those appropriate steps to get the repairs done. Are there any questions about that? And I think, yes.
For their parents, did not cover things like mold testing, like testing or something?
The question was for the repair deduct, would it cover things like mold testing? I don't know that we've had these attorneys try that and see. You could try it. It may end up in court with the landlord suing the tenant. I think the point of the whole health and safety thing is those imminent things, and mold is a really complicated issue. A lot of times when you're entering a lease, it'll say that you recognize that there's mold and you accept that it's there. That's one of those issues you should definitely reach out to a legal aid attorney if you have mold in the house. There's also requirements for tenants to take reasonable steps to prevent the accumulation of mold, which I know is a big issue in somewhere like Newport News. So if you have a leaky faucet, if you see water dripping, you need to take care of that before it becomes an issue, because if you later try to sue your landlord for that, the landlord can say, hey, they didn't take the steps they needed when it first does show up, or didn't call me to get fixed, therefore I shouldn't be responsible. Unfortunately, that's just the way things are right now. Yes.
For their 14 days, is that they have to show like
So the question was, after you serve written notice, does that 14 days have to be they start the repairs or finish the repairs? That 14 days is for them to either have completed the repairs or take major steps. It can't just be they walked by, they looked at it, haven't heard from it since. They had to have actually gone in, brought in the contractor, had major steps to get those repairs done. Yes, another question.
Question. New laws came out in July. New laws for allowing people, not tenants, but people to own apartments. I know new laws for safety reasons. I've seen a lot of cases in law in the landlords actually clearly got over the tenant. I mean, first time the contract, lease, some of the things broken in the house, and then a month later, the girl did want to tenants to replace the stuff that didn't need. Are there some things in place now that the landlords are responsible for even if the house out and ensure the safety of everything?
So make sure I understand the question correctly, so I'm having a hard time hearing. You're asking about there's new laws addressing.
Yeah, there's some laws for landlords. We have laws for tenants to do things. So we have a law protecting tenants from landlords. You just bring anything out to tenants who expect us to replace them into things you fix them.
I see. So the question was, are there laws that require the landlord to fix the issue rather than just pass it on to the tenant?
Yeah, and it's safety reasons.
For safety, so that's actually already existing under Virginia landlord tenant law. There's a list of things that your landlord cannot include in lease. They can't pass off their duties to you. They can't say, you need to be the one to fix the pipes if they bite. But you need to be the one to fix the air conditioning. You get liability for if anything breaks. That's illegal under Virginia law. If you have that clause in your lease contract, that is not enforceable. The landlord has a duty to maintain safe and habitable premises regardless. Really what I was talking about is those mechanisms to enforce that existing requirement. So that's true of leases already in Virginia. Now, if you have a landlord who has that there and they say like, well, you're responsible if the air conditioning goes out, you have to fix it. That's not enforceable in Virginia. If they try to get you responsible for that, a judge isn't going to entertain that, and you should file a tenant assertion. Yeah.
Let's go for businesses as well. If we're like our own business already, this all applies to businesses. If I'm written, for example, for childcare and the AC unit breaks or something happens, is that law apply to them as well?
So the question was, does this same body of law apply for commercial leases, so for businesses? That operates under a completely separate set of laws. Most of that is operated by contract, and a lot depends on what the contract says. I think typically the property owner should then be responsible, but I am not as familiar with the commercial context. That's when you should talk to an attorney who's familiar with that particular type of contract law. Awesome. And I think another important point too is if you have issues in your housing with mold or leaky roofs, chances are your neighbor does too. And so this is why it's important to talk to your neighbors and see if there's a collective solution to come. Because if you can come together with your neighbor, your landlord, and say, hey, it's not just me, it's everyone. That's much more powerful than just you by yourself going to court. Unfortunately, in Virginia right now, we don't have class action, but hopefully that's one of the things we want to see in the next session to make it easier for everyone to come together to get that relief. Now, if you all want to come together with your neighbors to pull resources to do a repair and deduct, that could be a pretty powerful tool. One tenant standing alone, it's easy to swat aside, but neighbors coming together, supporting each other, that can be really powerful. We have lots of all this same information on our website, which is housing.bplc.org. We also have the information for the different legal aid programs. If you have a housing question, you can either contact our eviction legal helpline at 1-833-NO-EVICT, or if you're in the Hampton Roads area, you can reach out to the Legal Aid Society of Eastern Virginia at 757-827-5078. But if you have like just a brief question, you can always email us at housing@bplc.org. One of our housing attorneys will check it and either answer your question or point you in the right direction if you don't know the answer. So if there aren't any other questions, we're going to go ahead. Oh, Tony, you need something? I was going to say, once Tony says her piece, we will take a break for lunch. No? Okay. Here you go, Tony.
Hi, guys. Feel free to talk amongst yourselves for a hot second. And if you're on Facebook Live, your time to go to the restroom.
Oh.
All right. Okay. Sorry, lunch is not going to be here until 12:30. I apologize. We're going to break for lunch. But for now, we're going to call out some names to go speak to attorneys. And in the meantime, do some community breakout if you just have basic.
So I just want to say thank you again for coming out. We have had requests for another one of these for those that couldn't make it today because they're working. But please, if you go to Delegate Marcia Price on Facebook, this live is there. There's lots of links that we've also put there. Please make sure you get all of these flyers. We're going to get pictures of the flyers on Facebook. And so until we see what other events could materialize, if we can just work to get the information out as best as possible. So you were here for you maybe, but also be here for your neighbor, also be here for your family. But thank you so much for joining us. And I see we have another question, so I'm gonna pass that to you. Oh, okay. Question for me.
I enjoy all.
Yes.
Everything costs me that side of the water. Have a legal on our side of the world.
Yes, so absolutely. So when I heard you saying Norfolk, I knew Tiffany and I were like, we got to see which part of Norfolk you are. There is a website that we put in the comments as well for who's my representative. So if you type in your address, it lets you know who's your delegate. Yes, so I know Jay Jones very personally, and I know he would do this. And so it's just a matter of him getting with his folks and everything. So this can be replicated. There's nothing, I mean, these folks work all over the Commonwealth. This can be replicated. I also think that we should do a, an online, just straight up video and have some things available. So this is not the last of the conversation, definitely. And I'll make sure I get with some of the Norfolk folks to make sure.
We have a lot of seniors that they're not equipped with computers.
Yeah.
They get frustrated when we have.
Yeah. And that's a great point. And yep. So bringing up that not all of our residents are able to do online applications, that's why we're here today. And so we will definitely work to replicate this around the different areas.
Thank you. The outreach committee, we'll be doing this regionally, and we are planning to do something in Norfolk, Virginia as well. I just wanted to say thanks to everyone who's come, and we had to change the order a bit because the food's not here. But I did want to recognize Elder Ernest Thompson from the African American Historical Society Newport News, and also for Melody, and look at some of the pillars of the East End Newport News area. So special thanks to you for trying to get the word out. Special thanks to you, Laura, for the work you've done in China. So Christie's coming now until the food is ready. I hope I say until the food is ready. Have a great day.
So I'm just going to call a couple of names again. I am going to remind you that if you've heard some information, you've changed your mind.
Thank you all so much for joining us. As we said, we will try to have more of these. So if you follow my page, Delegate Marcia, see a price for more information. But that's all for today. Please put your questions in the comments and we can connect you to the answers. Thank you.